What's happening at BlackRock and all of these other huge brokerage houses is the customers are saying, I want to invest in Bitcoin. I want to invest in Bitcoin. Like, how can you make it easy for me to invest in Bitcoin? Why don't you get this spot ETF going? Blah, blah, blah. And because of that, he is saying, look, we need to create a product that the people want. What they want is a spot Bitcoin ETF. So that's why he's doing it. He's not doing that because he's a good guy. He's doing that because he wants to make a ton of money off of this product, and BlackRock will make a ton of money off of this product.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the BitLab Academy Alpha Series here on BitBoy Crypto. Thank you to the BitSquad for hosting us on this channel. We're going to be sharing about 15 or 20 minutes of a topic that I'm talking today in this episode with Dr. Jeff Ross of Vailshire Capital. But before we get into that, I want to let you know you can watch the full episode on BitLab Academy, which is at youtube.com/@BitLab Academy. So without dragging out the long intro, without doing all that, let's just jump right in, because we want to make sure that we bring you meaningful data that could be a meaningful tool and an asset to all of your trading in this digital asset ecosystem. So without any further ado, how are you doing, Dr. Jeff Ross?
Hey, Kelly, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm thrilled to have you on. You know, you and I have spoken a few times on Twitter Spaces, and it's always been, I've always had such a big respect for the thoughts you bring to the table, and also the fact that you have a foot a little bit in both sides of the market, the traditional finance side, as well as the digital asset ecosystem. And I think you'll agree with me, far too many people on both sides of the fence. It's kind of like, it's almost like a political spectrum in finance. People are very tribal, whether it's TradFi or digital asset. And then even when you go deeper into the digital asset ecosystem, there's people that are absolute maximalists with Bitcoin, and other people that are absolute maximalists with an altcoin you've never heard of. And they may not have even looked at the other assets you're presenting them. So I want to say first, thank you for bringing so much to the ecosystem that you do. And, you know, with that being said, the markets are all over the place right now. Of course, we've got a little bit of a huge push in the narrative and the sentiment right now that's kind of been fueled and funneled in by BlackRock ETF application, not approval. And everybody needs to realize that. So what do you make of where we're at right now? And how do you contend with this still sort of overshadowing sort of bearishness that feels like it's looming, with people looking specifically at the trends of recessions that could come and how that could impact Bitcoin? That was a heavy question. I apologize. That
it was. I'll try to remember it and hit your salient details here. So let's start with the good news first. So with BlackRock submitting an application, and to your point, it's just an application. Nothing has been approved yet. I think it's a big deal, though, from a narrative standpoint. Why is that? It's because Larry Fink has been one of the largest adversaries to Bitcoin and towards this entire, digital asset space for years and years and years, right? And so what this says to me, and first of all, I want to make very clear, Larry Fink is not a good guy. He's not, and he may not be a bad guy, but he's not doing this out of the goodness of his heart, right?
So what you're saying is that clip yesterday of him on his little PR tour, obviously supporting the asset that he has an application out to have a spot ETF on, where he says BlackRock is about hope. You don't agree with that?
Yeah, I do not believe that. No, he is a salesman, right? He is a marketer, extreme. He's a professional. What does he do? Like other people of his ilk, he creates financial products that people want to buy. And so what this says to me, Bitcoin is this ground up movement. Everything else in Wall Street, and I come from Wall Street, obviously, as a fund manager and a RIA, everything else in Wall Street is basically a top down approach. Like, we are creating this and we are disseminating it to the people and we'll profit from it. Bitcoin is this ground up movement. And so what's happening at BlackRock and all of these other huge brokerage houses is the customers are saying, I want to invest in Bitcoin. I want to invest in Bitcoin. Like, how can you make it easy for me to invest in Bitcoin? Why don't you get this spot ETF going? Blah, blah, blah. And because of that, he is saying, look, we need to create a product that the people want. What they want is a spot Bitcoin ETF. It's slightly different. Technically, it's an open-ended trust fund, basically, but it functions basically like an ETF. And so that's why he's doing it. He's not doing that because he's a good guy. He's doing that because he wants to make a ton of money off of this product, and BlackRock will make a ton of money off of this product if it gets approved. So that's the good news, right? And why is that good? Mostly because the boomers love Larry Fink and BlackRock, and they love old Wall Street people, right? They love Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger and James Dimon, all these guys. Jamie Dimon said James. Jamie Dimon, all these old guys, right, that are billionaires, and that they tell the rest of the people what to believe, and the boomers all nod their heads when Larry Fink or Jamie Dimon or Warren Buffett says something. And so just the fact that Larry Fink now, who has been really, anti-Bitcoin because it wastes energy and it's killing the environment and blah, 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 all the FUD, now he's on the other side. And so what that does is it gives these older people the freedom to go ahead and invest in it. And more importantly, I would say it gives asset managers, so fund advisors, investment advisors, financial planners, they now have no career risk putting their clients in Bitcoin, especially if this gets approved by the SEC. There is a huge wall of money that is just waiting. If I remember correctly, the baby boomers have about $72 trillion in assets, and almost none of that is currently sitting in Bitcoin. And so I think that this will bring a flood of money into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And obviously, if it does, the price will go much higher.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you on all accounts there. And I think this last Thursday, I did a video on the BitLab Academy YouTube stream, and the thumbnail and the title is essentially, it had an image of BlackRock and it had a stamp of approval and then the Bitcoin symbol. And I think some people might mistakenly have thought, oh, this means a BlackRock ETF was approved. No, that's not the point. I think exactly what you just highlighted, I think, is one of the most important factors, that a lot of the space, especially people waiting on the sidelines, and then people that have been actually had an adverse sort of awareness or the wrong awareness, a fudded sort of awareness of the space that was manipulated by all the banks over the last 7 years. I think to your point, BlackRock was discussing how Bitcoin, all it was an index for money laundering. Well, funny, now they're opening an ETF for Bitcoin. So did that change, or now they just trying to change the narrative so they can participate? But the stamp of approval is I actually in some ways think is more important than the spot ETF, because it marks a seismic shift in the global financial marketplace, and saying, okay, Bitcoin is something that we can all participate in. So everybody start your engines, start getting aware, especially small family offices. As you said, however many trillions of dollars are out there. I pulled up on my screen on that stream last week just a list of the top 65 assets under management holdings in the world, and it took to get down to number 60 before it was under like $1 trillion assets under management. So, and that's just the top in the world. There's probably more money combined with all the small family offices all over the world than there is in these, this disproportionately large holdings of these big companies. To break this back, let's take it back for a second. We're kind of talking, and I'm aware of this. We have to take a step back for the beginners out there. What does this mean for price in the next 3 months? Okay, how do we trade this? Should we trade it? Is there a timeline? Is there any sort of thing? Is there any sort of date on the horizon that we should be looking to, where it's a buy the rumor, sell the news? Because we saw when the Bitto ProShares Futures ETF launched a few years ago, that also marked basically near a top. So is this going to somehow potentially have a same effect or not, because we also have the halving coming up? How do we make sense of this when we're trying to invest and trade this, especially for a newcomer?
Sure. So my first recommendation would be don't trade Bitcoin, right? I think of Bitcoin as the ultimate savings technology. And this is my, my famous quip is you don't trade your checking account or your savings account. You shouldn't really trade Bitcoin. I'm a big believer in just stacking sats, right? So whenever you have free cash or whenever you have trading profits or investment profits, consider putting that into Bitcoin, and that will serve you well for your life. If you insist on trading, and tons of people do, right? So if you insist on trading, a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I think it's important to understand, I think the Bitcoin bull market started basically in December of 2022. So we hit the lows in November. And then I think that is the beginning of basically a 3-year bull market if history repeats or rhymes. And I do think that it will rhyme probably. Sorry. So what does that mean? So from me as an investor and as somewhat of a trader, anytime you're in a bull market, dips are for buying, right? And just like if you're in a bear market, rips are for shorting. So I think we're in the dips are for buying stage of where Bitcoin is right now. For BlackRock and for the ETF approval, so they resubmitted their stuff, right? They resubmitted their application because they needed to name Coinbase as the exchange that they were going to be using for their surveillance sharing agreement. They just resubmitted that, I think, at the end of June 30th. So that gives them, I believe, a 45-day minimum window for the SEC to respond. But they also have many months. I can't remember, 6 to 9 months or so they have to make a final decision. So they
Yeah,
could
I
report.
believe it's in February. If it might be before that. It's like that
Well,
was like the
I
terminal
think
date.
I think it was either March or April, but then they delayed and resubmitted it, so it may even get pushed into May or so. So, anyways, whatever it is, one of us is we're in the ballpark probably. It could be as soon as mid-August of this year, or as late as basically next spring sometime. So hard to trade that kind of stuff, right? I do think though that for the way most of these things have worked in the past, it does become a buy the rumor, sell the news. So if we see stuff leading up to it, like, oh, people are getting excited, oh, we think that an approval is going to happen from the SEC, I would expect the price to rip and then probably take a break after that on the day that it gets approved. But if they just kind of come out and surprise us, say at 45 days, nobody's really paying attention to it, it's not in the news, and the SEC just comes out and says, hey, we approve this, that would be a huge shot in the arm to the upside for the price of Bitcoin for sure. So there's other macro indicators to take into account. I know we've talked about this on your show before on Twitter, but I think about things like liquidity. I watch that very closely. What's liquidity doing in the US? What's it doing worldwide? I do think that drives asset prices. It definitely has been a driver of Bitcoin in the past, and I expect that to continue going forward. So I'm happy to dive into that a little bit if you want to too.
Yeah, we can definitely dive into that. I think just to continue on this thread for just a moment longer, there's no right way to really participate in investing because everybody has a different time horizon. Everybody has a different risk tolerance. Everybody has a different level of ability to manage stress. And to be honest, I would argue, even with BitLab Academy, we teach all the different tenets from the psychology, your inner operating system, to what's the action plan to put in progress when you're trading. I honestly think that the far majority of people probably they're jumping onto a ship that they're trying to run before they learn to walk, right? And so I think the majority, a lot of the people in the digital asset ecosystem disproportionately hold riskier assets, which I'm not going to make a comment about that everybody has their own sort of strategy, and most people actually don't have a strategy. They're just throwing money at the wall. And I want to help influence. I don't want to say influence. I want to help encourage people to do a little bit more diligence in what they're looking at. But when we're thinking about the ETF right now, and of course this has a major impact on Bitcoin, how should we be considering this also in the context of the sort of not even veiled uncertainty, this absolute uncertainty that's sort of pervasively just like putting pressure down on the altcoin market because of this question. We don't need to get into a debate about what a security is about altcoins, but it's a clear sort of pressure on the market right now. Will this be something that's going to disproportionately help Bitcoin and ETH? And we're going to see those dominances go up while the rest of the altcoin market falls? Or is this going to be something similar to previous cycles where Bitcoin runs, then ETH runs, and then we basically get this somewhat delayed or laggard alt season, whatever other narrative is out there next after that? Like, how is this just a Bitcoin, Ethereum focused time frame right now, or how should we be looking at this?
Part of so yes, and I'll say yes and sort of. So the yes is when the SEC laid out their cases against Coinbase and Binance, as everybody knows, they basically listed four things that were sort of free of worry, right? So people suddenly are less worried from the SEC's perspective about Bitcoin, about ETH. I think it's Bitcoin Cash and maybe Litecoin, or I don't pay attention to those things, but I think those are the four that kind of have these are okay for now, kind of assets. So will they run? I would expect them to run higher and faster and first because of that regulatory clarity. We've talked about this as well before. I've been warning for like a year to year and a half, like be very careful for those. I'm a former, I like to call myself a former degen crypto trader. I use that term affectionately back in 2016, 2017. And then I basically, as you know, focused primarily on Bitcoin since then. But what I'm telling people who are still in the crypto space is just be careful, right? There's a lot of uncertainty out there with the SEC. We don't know how these cases are going to go. There's the litigation against Grayscale, and then the litigation, obviously, against these other exchanges that we talked about. It's possible that they will come down with the hammer. And why is that important? Because that means there won't be a big crypto bull market, at least here in the US, right? So what that's going to mean is that some cryptos will get shut down. Others will basically be forced out of the country and move elsewhere. Now, there'll probably be another large market in the rest of the world that people can go ahead and trade on, but it's not just this sort of guarantee like it was in the past years. So I just warn people who kind of follow like Bitcoin dominance relative to cryptos, which I don't think is a useful classification personally. But that past pattern that people are used to may not happen this time around. So full circle, be careful. And again, this comes from me. I'm an asset manager, right? Nothing I say is an investment or trading advice, and I have to clarify in everything I say with that statement. But just be careful. Be a little bit conservative. Please don't put your life saving in some crypto because you're sure that what happened 4 years ago is going to happen again this time around. It's possible that it won't happen, and only a select few assets will make it through the SEC's scrutiny and the regulators. If they come down hard, I think that's going to be really rough for kind of the rest of crypto.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding the bell, join us in our community here, and make sure if you haven't yet, come and join us on the BitLab Academy YouTube page here at youtube.com/@BitLab Academy. We go live every day, Monday through Friday, around 10:15 a.m. Eastern time. So I hope to see you there. Dr. Jeff Ross, I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anywhere people should find you? I pulled up your page, but is there any other spots that people should be looking for you? Anything you got coming up?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter all the time. My handle there is @VailshireCap. And then if I'm also an investment advisor and a fund manager. So if you want to learn more about that, you can send me an email at info@vailshire.com, or I have a web page for my company called vailshire.com. You're welcome to check it out.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Everybody, thank you all so much for being here again. You can follow Dr. Jeff Ross right here. You can see on the Twitterverse right here, at VAILSHIRE cap. Just make sure I only spell these out for people because there's so many fake profiles of all of us out here putting out content. And if you haven't yet, make sure you check out BitLab Academy. There's still a coupon code that you could utilize if you want to get involved here. Give me 30 for 30% off the all access pass for the premium Discord, as well as all of the courses that we put out. And remember, it's not just about trading. There's stuff in here, psychology of trading, what's the balance of life, because in order to operate well on the playground, you have to have a good, healthy body, good, healthy mind. Otherwise, you're not going to be making smart decisions. And we have all of that here in BitLab Academy. So without any further ado, and thank you all for watching. I appreciate you all being here. My name's Kelly Kellum. Hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.